Hello everyone, Kurt Alfreda here, and I'm back to talk to you about a budding development that I'm having within Fiore's Abrazare, or Wrestling at the Arms, or Embrace section of his books, in something I'm calling the Posta Perspective. It's been a while since I've had a post here and a video. The Fiore curriculum for our group has been off and running here, and lots of great developments in there, and we're starting from the ground up. So we haven't even touched a sword yet, which is actually quite exciting to see the amount of connections that I'm finding, and I think some other people are finding, and how much more you can learn about fencing and whatnot by using your arms. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today, like I said, is I call it the Posta Perspective. One of the big things that was a kind of a problem for me in looking at a lot of HEMA text is trying to understand what techniques are without bringing in some of the Japanese martial arts into the picture. One, let me be clear, when I say that, that is not at all to defame the importance and the capabilities of the Japanese martial art. Not at all. However, when we are talking about trying to understand the concepts of a time, it's difficult because we kind of frog DNA certain things in there and say, well, it's this or it's that, and so on and so forth. It's become my personal belief that you can actually teach wrestling, the totality of wrestling within Fiore's manuscript, with just using his terms. And how we do that, or how I do that within my course, is I teach it by what I call the Posta Perspective, which is he's never not wrestling, and that the first four guards are not positions that you hold. They're things that naturally happen under arms. So instead of looking at the descriptors as this is exactly how something is, to me it becomes more of guidance of that this is something that's going to happen. As I started to reflect upon this, throughout the entirety of his manuscript, there's also some very interesting stuff in there that kind of is revealed as well. Applying his footwork, applying his turns. These are all things right here that are necessary within the structure and context of Fiore. It's not just for fighting with a sword, it's fighting in general. So when I say the Posta Perspective, I'm saying that ultimately we are looking at the first four postures. That's his Posta Longa, his Dente di Cingaro, his Posta Frontale, and his Porta di Ferro. And all these right here, you can perform any wrestling technique, any throw, hand-to-hand combat strikings, arm wraps, by moving to and through these positions. So one of the things that I teach within my curriculum is that we are enhancing this by also utilizing the turns of what he has shown later on with footwork. When you throw somebody and how you trip somebody, one of the things that always I pay attention to within his structure is why there's not a lot of leg sweeps in the way that we think of leg sweeps. Because of my recent exposure to more armored combat wrestling, it makes a lot of sense when you start talking about why you don't have these massive leg sweeps and how it's just enough to kind of almost put your leg there in place to trip the person over. How the carapace of the armor that we're wearing actually locks us into positions and takes away some of our flexibility. So today I'm going to talk about really just three movements that I show people in the very beginning. This is just the beginning of what's the Posta Perspective, and how my thesis is that he is never not wrestling, which means that he is never in one of the four wrestling guards. And if you can change how this works by utilizing the turns of the foot and the turns of the sword and other things in place later on to create different postures and positions. And these all create different actions. So again, this is just kind of a slight journey through this. I'm going to go through the four guards of what he shows right here, and I'm going to talk about what I think each one of them are to a certain extent. From there, I'm just going to show how these apply and how in applying his footwork, we actually create some really horrific throws, arm bars, locks, and that actually may give us context as to how we get into an engagement and not just start off and like, hey, I have my arm up here in position. Not that you couldn't, but real street fights, real hand-to-hand combat scenarios, they don't start with people saying they come up to each other and they assume a guard. No, normally it's very fast, it's very kinetic, and you flow through positions. So that's kind of the perspective piece on that. Anyway, with that being the case, we'll kick into the movements. So Fiore has 4 guards that he utilizes, or positions, postures, posta, within his Abrazare section. At first, I didn't really think much about this when I was first trying to figure out anything within HEMA. But the more I looked at these 4 guards, these 4 positions, postures, whatever you want to call them, the more I started to realize these actually, they're snapshots. It's Rolodex. So if we've stopped looking at this as a position of guard and like, I'm ready to receive somebody, let's take this up to the level about how his manuscript looks. You start off with hand-to-hand, then you move to unarmed versus dagger, dagger against dagger, then you have dagger against sword, sword against dagger, and then you start seeing progressions upwards into equal planes to upper plane, as in like, sword against spear. So the spear's got some elevation to it that the sword does not. So now you're fighting uphill. So you're progressively doing this. Mind you, the book that I'm working off of here mostly is the Getty. So with that being the case here, I'm going to talk about why these terms and everything else here, and what I think right here is the core of what he's saying here, gives a concept to what is actually happening in a fight. So the 4 positions that he shows within Abrazare. You have your posta longa, which in this case right here, typically the hand's back, like this. I do not think that it means it's just, you're not going to walk around with just one hand up. People did not just say, oh wait, hold on, his right hand's up here, I have to go here. No, ultimately, one arm being extended like this. This is posta longa, whether it's right foot or left foot. This is posta longa. He specifically shows this right here where the reaching hand is the same to the reaching leg. That's why I call this right now. I think that it has context to it because if I go crossbody here, I'm a lot easier to be tipped over. So doing this right here, it's a lot easier to grab. Nice one is this dente di cingaro. So all we do for that here is out here, and we're going to bring this hand back. So this is your dente di cingaro, right? Here to here. Posta longa, dente di cingaro. Again, it can be done on both sides. It doesn't matter. I don't think we had people out there going like, we're ready to fight like this. No, I think the whole concept is that this right here is what you can do with your arms. Then you have posta frontale. And all this right here is, again, if we go from posta longa, I just bring this other hand up. And again, that's it. I don't believe these things are supposed to be static, perfect shots. I think it's supposed to be like, okay, hold on here. I'm wrestling here to here to here. They're just positions that he's showing you, like, look, your arm, this is what you do with your arm. This is another one, etc. The last one is Porta di Ferro. Porta di Ferro being off to the side here, hands in position. And again, I believe it can be done on either side. So what is this bias? First and foremost, if you're talking about a situation like I think Fiore is talking about, I don't think he's talking about a duelist situation. Not that you can use this stuff for dueling, not that you didn't have the type of trials at arms, but if he is a mercenary, if he is a knight, if he has led a life of violence, then it's safe to say that he's had his fair share of scraps, anywhere from hand to hand all the way up to horse. With that being the case, there's only so many ways in which we can, from a standing position, get in contact with somebody over here. So instead of looking at it as like, oh, there's a guard here, I got to take a guard here against this, I decided to look at this a little bit differently. And how I looked at this right here is that you are talking about being able to, if I'm trying to get to a target that's over here, that I have to somehow extend to this. So I can reach with one hand, or I can reach with two hands. That's it. You know, it's very simple. It's very mechanical. It's very easy. person's there, I reach with one hand or I reach with two. You know, to some of my Marine Corps buddies, they might be like, well, you can always do this. Bad joke. But the point being is, if I'm trying to grab somebody, I can grab them like this and then hit them up with this. And by the way, what am I moving into? I'm moving into a frontale position. That's all it is to me. When I grab somebody here, I might pull a knife and stab him. What am I in? I'm in a frontale position. Someone's coming at me as far as grabbing at me. So now we reverse the roles. This is somebody who's grabbing at me. And as he grabs at me, he has one hand or two hands. I can also meet on the inside of his arm. I can also cover, utilizing my arm here, or I can decide to come off the side using both my hands to get different positions. Depending on what happens after all of this, depending on what happens for all of this, there's a couple ways in which we can work through on this. The last one of this, I believe, is the key, and that is your Posta Perspective. So if I'm down here like this, if anyone's ever actually been in a real street fight, people aren't doing this right here. It's not Street Fighter. There's a lot of times people keep their hands down. They're keeping their hands down because putting their hands up gives you a reason to grab. So with that being the case, having the hands down, you don't know what's going on there. You don't know if you want to get in a fight, or maybe you're just standing there. Who knows? But the point being is here, being in this Posta Perspective, and how this is the position that we wait from to explode out of, and how this is also the position we go to for throws, then that means to me that if I reach into this person, I can transverse to the guards and eventually find a way to get to Posta Perspective, where you are throwing somebody to the ground. So with that being the case, later on in his manuscript, he talks about footwork with the sword. With that being the case, though, I don't think it's just a sword thing that you have these kind of footwork pieces. If you apply all Fiore's terminology, you get something which allows you to parry out with your arm and then to step into position to get into a throw, so the opposite shoulder, and then utilizing stable turn of your feet, you get to throw somebody. What that looks like, how I see this, if someone is grabbing at me with one hand, like I said, I'm just going to give 3 movements today. The thing I'm talking about here is someone grabbing at me with one hand. So Posta Longa against me being in Posta Perspective. He's grabbing at me. He is trying to grab me. He's trying to control me somehow. He's trying to enter into to do harm. Whether his hand's back right here, maybe his hand's back here to pull his knife. Maybe his hand's back here to hit me in the face with his fist. Who knows? Not important. What is important is that they are going. And in going in right here to me, I have a couple things I can do. What I teach my people, and this is ultimately why I see how all of his plays within every part of the manuscript, is that ultimately he is going to these positions, the ones that he describes within each section, and they are all founded upon the first 4, wrestling. As someone grabs in here, so say they're trying to grab my shoulder, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. I can utilize an offline Abrazare as I go into Posta Frontale. I can wrap his hand here, and now from this position, I passare, so I'm alongside his body. Now he's here, my hand's on his shoulder, his face is here, and then as I'm bringing my hand down, just like we see with the Posta Longa, I then just do a stable turn of the feet to throw them. So in other words, I've covered, I've wrapped, Posta Longa, Posta Perspective. I've covered in, I've wrapped, Posta Perspective. And when we say this, before people say, well, yeah, I know you're backwards, it's perspective. The image shows him like this. But if I've wrapped somebody, I'm going to do it the other way here. But if I've wrapped somebody's arm and I've come here and I come this way, I'm in Posta Perspective. I know the manuscript shows him facing different directions, but I don't think that matters. By me going in to here to perform the throw, my face is this direction. I can wait here for another one, or I put them down to the ground. So ultimately, that can be explained. That is one. That's step in between through to throw somebody. That's just utilizing all Fiore terminology. They're grabbing at you by going into extension. If we understand something else in context later on that they talk within sword about stabile, instabile, pulsativa, which I know is in the sword manual, but it does not apply just to the sword. Then by moving into something like this right here, you're unstable. You can be pulled, you can be broke. This is very quick to come out. So you're moving into something. I counter move against that. I've made connection with his arm. He's going this way. I wrap his hand through this way right here. His head's here. I have his shoulder, and then I just turn. Stable turn of the feet. I am playing on one side of my body. And they're on the ground. So that is just showing, again, basic movement of what happens when you apply Fiore terms. So thank you everyone again for tuning in on that. As you can see right here, I'm just breaking this down into very basic movements in which I see from the text itself. A lot of this came down from reading the descriptions from some of the books and translation pieces in regards to what are these things. And my big indicator was looking at the very first play section where you see them setting up to get the arm lock. In that it's written as something along the lines of, we come to this in many forms of using the postures of Abrazare. I see that as him talking about you're entering into these kind of concepts. Usually those 4 postures, and you get yourself there. It doesn't matter. One way or the other, you end up being in a space right there where you are either moving to or through to get to that last piece. This is my interpretation. It works for me. It works for the people I'm training with right now. I'm always welcome for people to give me their thoughts and perspectives, please. I would ask that you do, please, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's on here, please message me. Let me know what you think about this. This is a huge indicator to me because it just made Fiore a lot more enlightening to me, where it's like, oh, I'm going to be going right into these concepts all over the place anyway. It doesn't matter. And that you're constantly changing the narrative by just adding something into your hand. You start off with the body first and how you look and how you manipulate out that, you might get a big picture of it all. So that's what happened with me. Again, please, any questions or thoughts, please leave a comment below, leave a message on Facebook. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you like this, like and subscribe. Like I said, I know I've been kind of infrequently, but I've been doing a lot of work here to try to bring this more into effect within the people I train with. But I will always put out videos as much as I possibly can. Anyway, train well, take care, be safe, and fight on. I will see you in the next video.